You're not stuck. You're just running in circles. You think you're stuck, but stuck would be still. You're not still. You're spinning. Same thoughts, same triggers, same emotional spiral, rebranded as thinking time. You think you're thinking, but you're looping, mentally pacing inside a system that's already been wired by fear, by habit, by memory. And the loop has one job: keep you here, thinking just enough to avoid action. You call it overanalyzing. You call it clarity seeking. But it's not clarity, it's repetition. And your brain doesn't care if it's accurate. It only cares if it's familiar. Because familiar equals safe, even if it's killing your momentum. You don't need to break through. You need to break the rhythm, the loop, the code. Not with motivation, with interruption. That's how cold mind moves. And that's exactly where we begin. The brain doesn't want truth. It wants familiar. Your brain is efficient, not curious, not wise, not honest. It's not looking for what's true. It's looking for what it already knows how to survive. That's why most of your thoughts aren't new. They're cached responses, hard-coded during past threat, now auto-executed. You think you're analyzing, but you're just looping. Not because you're broken, but because the system rewards consistency over clarity. Here's how it works. You feel something. Your brain searches for the last time you felt that way, then runs the same behavior. Not because it's right, but because it's already coded. That's why you delay, why you overthink, why you react before you even notice the trigger. It's not emotion, it's automation. And every loop you run gets stronger. Repetition becomes default. Default rewrites identity. And eventually, you forget this was a choice. You call it just how I am. But it's not who you are. It's just who the loop trained you to be. The brain doesn't ask, does this move me forward? It asks, have we done this before and survived? That's the only metric. So when you try to break free, to act different, speak different, become different, your system resists. Your resistance isn't logic, it's legacy. Familiar feels safe, even when it's a cage. So the next time you feel stuck, don't ask for motivation. Ask, what loop am I rehearsing right now? Because until you see it, you can't stop it. And until you stop it, you're not thinking, you're reliving. Five, mental loops that keep you stuck. You don't need 100 problems. You just need one loop that keeps running. Because one tight loop can override momentum, clarity, identity. Here are the 5 most common ones. 1. The fear of mistake loop. You want to move, but fear kicks in. What if it's wrong? So you delay. You plan more. You wait for certainty. And the delay becomes proof that you're not ready. So you don't move again. Loop complete. 2. The overthinking loop. You start with a question, then build 10 more. You analyze, project, replay. But the more you think, the less clear you feel. You overthink to escape the fog that overthinking built. That's not clarity, that's a spiral. 3. The control loop. You feel unsafe, so you tighten your grip. You micromanage, you overcheck. You can't let go. But the more you control, the more fragile things feel. So you control even more. You're not stabilizing. You're choking the system. 4. The self-blame loop. Something breaks. You blame yourself. You replay what you should have done. You relive it. You over-own it. Eventually, you call it your identity. But guilt isn't growth. It's internalized punishment disguised as self-awareness. 5. The expectation collapse loop. You expect. You imagine. You hope. Reality doesn't match. You spiral. You reset the bar, then start over. It's not ambition. It's not ambition. It's emotional dependency disguised as ambition. Each of these loops looks different on the outside, but inside, they run the same code. Trigger, reaction, emotion, justification, repeat. And every time you repeat the pattern, you give the brain one message. This is who I am now. But it's not. It's just a loop you haven't interrupted. Yet. Why you don't escape? Because the loop feels like truth. You think you haven't broken the loop because it's hard, because you lack tools, or motivation, or time. But that's not it. The real reason is simpler and sharper. The loop feels true. You don't question it because it speaks your language. It sounds like your inner voice. It uses your emotions. It pulls from your past. And your brain? It's designed to believe anything that's been felt more than once. Here's what that looks like. You procrastinate. But it doesn't feel like fear. It feels like logic. It's not the time. Let me process more. I need more clarity. That's not truth. That's a loop disguised as preparation. You spiral in overthinking, but it doesn't feel like avoidance. It feels like intelligence. You're not avoiding action. You're being responsible, making sure, just covering angles. But in reality, you're rehearsing the same thoughts for the 100th time and calling it strategy. That's the danger of mental loops. They don't trap you with force. They trap you with familiarity. They use your emotional history to recreate certainty, even when that certainty is keeping you stuck. Your brain doesn't ask, is this thought accurate? It asks, have we survived this loop before? If yes, it repeats it, because repetition feels safe, even if it's destructive, even if it costs your growth. So every time you react the same way, you reinforce the loop. And over time, your system stops looking for new responses. It just plays back the strongest pattern. That's why you don't escape. Not because you can't, but because the loop starts echoing like your internal compass. And if you've never separated reaction from identity, you'll keep mistaking the loop for self. So the shift begins here. Stop trusting what feels true just because it's familiar. Start asking, what does this loop want me to repeat again? Because once you see the loop, you can name it. And once you name it, you don't have to live in it. Not forever. Not again. Cold interrupt system. 3 tactical steps to break the loop. You don't break mental loops with insight. You break them with interruption. Not emotional, not dramatic, just mechanical. Here's how cold mind does it. 1. Label the loop. You can't break a pattern you haven't seen. So the first move is always recognition. Stop mid-reaction and ask, what loop is this? Fear of failure, overthinking control, expectation collapse. Name it. Because the moment you name it, you create distance. And distance kills momentum. You don't need to feel better. You need to see clearer. And naming the loop puts it back in front of you, instead of running behind you. 2. Freeze the reaction. Every loop feeds on speed. The faster the response, the deeper the groove. So pause. Stop mid-scroll, mid-reply, mid-thought. Not to reflect, to disrupt. Even a 1-second delay breaks the rhythm. It says, I'm not continuing the code just because it's familiar. That's not weakness, that's design. 3. Inject a neutral action. Now that the loop is frozen, you insert friction, something small, intentional, opposite of your usual move. You want to scroll? Stand up. You want to spiral? Say out loud, this is a loop. It doesn't decide what I do next. You want a delay? Do one thing. No drama. No emotion. Just disruption. No motivation. Just movement. This is where the system rewires. Not because you changed your mindset, but because you changed your motion. The brain learns by doing, and the moment it sees a new behavior after the same trigger, the loop cracks. That's cold interrupt. Name the code. Freeze the motion. Inject a move the loop can't compute. No force, no fire, just pattern disruption. Repeat that enough times, and your old loops lose all grip. Final message. You're not powerless. You're just on playback. You've seen someone do it. They didn't get motivated. They didn't wait for clarity. They just stopped. Mid-pattern, mid-thought, mid-reaction, and did something different. Not because they felt ready, but because they understood loops don't end. They get interrupted. They weren't loud, weren't inspired. They just built friction where emotion used to take over. They paused the spiral, stepped out, chose a move that had nothing to do with how they felt. And in that moment, the loop lost power. They didn't need a breakthrough. They changed one line, and the entire program recompiled. That's cold mind, not emotional, not aggressive, just surgical. Break the loop, freeze the system, inject a new line. Repeat. You're not stuck. You're not frozen. You're just running legacy code, no longer relevant to this version of you. And you don't need to feel free to act free. You just need to break the next 3 seconds differently. That's how it starts. In the next video, we'll dive into emotional anchoring, how people unconsciously tie you to emotional roles, so you keep looping their patterns instead of building your own. Subscribe, interrupt the rhythm, cut the playback, move different. Cold, clear, in control.